Hello and welcome to another episode of the Midierror Meets podcast, where we speak to all sorts of people who work within sound and music. On the show this time we have Angela Sheik, who is a loop artist who's based in LA in the States. She's a loop artist who loves using all kinds of instruments, all weird and wonderful instruments like synths and acoustic instruments. Angela won a national US competition run by Boss for loop pedal artists. She's had her music played on TV shows, she's had her music placed on advertising, and released a number of albums too. I do all this stuff by myself. Your support is greatly appreciated from the podcast, whether it's comments or likes or shares. You can also donate via Ko-fi or PayPal if you like to support the running of it. It takes a lot of time to do this, and your support is greatly appreciated. But enough of that, let's get on with the show. And the first thing I asked Angela was about her musical beginnings.
Well, I grew up going to public school and started in the band program and the chorus program there. That was probably my first start to being engaged in music. I grew up in the church, so there was a lot of hymns. My dad loved musicals, so I had kind of a very, I would say, limited musical beginning, and kind of had to discover what interested me on my journey. And I'm kind of a late bloomer that way, but also so enthusiastic when I actually find the music that gets me excited. So yeah, I started playing flute when I was in 5th grade, and I still play that today. And eventually went and studied music education for flute and piano, and taught middle and high school band and orchestra for 8 years, and began constantly riding kids, or like yelling at kids for not practicing and realizing I was never practicing. And then kind of did some soul searching there and realized the only thing I was really drawn to practice anymore was my own material, writing, creating my own material, and kind of jumped off from there to performing for other people.
Nice. And what were so you said you started off on quite a religious tip, like musically. Was there a time when you sort of discovered like other music that was possibly like slightly inappropriate and anti sort of Christian? Well, I'm guessing it's Christian. What I'm guessing.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, just expanding to what was even available. But I think the first record that somebody gave me that I got excited about was in high school, and that was "Fumbling Toward Ecstasy" by Sarah McLachlan. So this was in the 90s, and that was just the first album that I heard somebody being expressive and just writing about life, and maybe just the first musical risks I heard was that album. And later on, I went to a couple parties where I heard Sneaker Pimps and Chemical Brothers and Portishead, Massive Attack, and that is really where I was like, where have you been all my life? Kind of a moment. And I love trip hop and that kind of music to this day. So
absolutely, yeah, me too. I mean, I think Britain. Yeah, we still love our trip hop and our break beats, even though they're not like in the charts or anything like that. There's just something magic about those. Massive Attack and Portishead and
Radiohead, all the heads. I'm big fan.
All the heads, yeah exactly.
Talking Heads, they're all good.
That's cool, and it's interesting that you were sort of doing stuff with bands or with orchestras, and maybe feeling that other people weren't pulling their weight, and then wanting to go on your own direction.
Yeah, feeling my hypocrisy, I think, was the jumping off point for my musical career. Yeah. So I have a lot of classical training, so I would throw Beethoven and Mozart in there, Ravel, and some of the Mussorgsky is a big influence on me. But yeah, absolutely, pop music was kind of the trip hop sound was where I first fell in love.
Nice. And what drew you to it? What drew you to that trip hop sound? What was it in there that got you?
I mean, other than Beth Gibbons' voice, I think it was the way that they would treat this often ethereal, often female vocal, kind of a floating vocal. Okay, it could be male as well, but with this gritty, beat-driven, chill sound underneath it. I think the paradox between those two things just hits me in a really delicious way. I just love that. I love that combination. I'm always after that. I'm always after that. Ethereal and cinematic, but gritty and dark.
Definitely, all of those things. Yeah, it's a really good way of describing it. I know I mean, yeah, it just crossed quite a few boundaries, didn't it, between hip hop, breakbeats, being sort of political activism as well, you know, being anti-establishment. Yes, you've maybe got a couple of trip hop tracks that are in the charts, but yeah, the really driving, dirty, dark stuff was for all the people.
I love it.
Yeah. And were you drawn? Was there any particular instrument that you felt like you were really drawn to and you were connected to?
I mean, my favorite instrument that I just can't get the right person to play is bass clarinet. That's the band teacher in me, but man, I love some bass clarinet with some stink on it, as we say. But I love the bass, working with the drums. Deep sounding instruments, like a very crunchy, angry Moog kind of a sound. I love synth bass. Yeah.
Nice. When you say it's got a stink on it, what can you translate that for me and some other people?
Yes, it got a stink on it. It's a little funky. It's imperfect. It's human sounding. It's got attitude and some swagger to it. It's not falling directly on the beat like my classical training would have me to be, like right in the center of each beat. Yeah, it's a little ahead or a little behind. It's got some squeaks and cracks in there. I love all of that.
Excellent. That's a great description. Thank you.
Stank.
Okay,
got some stank on it.
I'll use that one in future. I'll drop that one in and pretend I know what I'm talking about. Yeah, I see that you've you've got some really nice equipment sort of scattered around your pages and in much of your videos. I saw a Micro Korg on your website.
Yes,
of course.
She's over there. She's just out of view, but my Micro Korg is right here. Yeah, one of my first synths.
Is it?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I was after the vocoder at first. And I love the analog feel of the original Micro Korg, which has a whole bunch of buttons rather than the LED screen that you have to scroll through. That just I like mechanical responses. That's why I'm drawn to the loop pedal versus performing live with Ableton. I just like the stomp and the physical action that the whole crowd gets to see. So yeah, I love kind of an analog crossover to a digital synth.
Yeah, it is. I think it's so right about things that are a bit tactile, things that you can actually touch and feel moving.
Yes.
There is something so nice about finding a sweet spot on a synth or something and just like going, oh my God, don't touch it. That's where it's going to stay for a minute.
Take a picture. Because it's not going to, there's no way to save it.
Yeah, I've even heard somebody play like a really ambient set with a Micro Korg. Like for me personally, I always knew the Micro Korg as being like, you know, drum and bass, breakbeat bass lines and leads and just disgusting like pop out the speakers kind of sounds. But I saw someone here and he was playing piano in a Micro Korg and he had a couple of like a reverb pedal or something like that. And I was thinking there's no way he's going to be able to combine a Micro Korg and a piano. I'm sorry. I was just like, this is going to be a really weird mix. But he ended up having this probably one of the most amazing performances I've ever seen, where it was an ambient set with a Micro Korg.
Yeah.
So he programmed in all these really
I believe it. I haven't
pads
seen it much, but I believe it. Yeah.
Yeah, you can do it. You have to like dive in, don't you? Because there's like so many options.
Yeah. I said you couldn't save. You can change and save the sounds on there. So I believe you could have a nice. It's quite versatile. It is kind of a punchy little guy, but yeah, that's interesting. I've seen people use it all sorts of ways.
And yeah, the vocoder definitely drew people in for sure. I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, how did you get on with your first experiments vocoding? And
I had a hard time because the signal would drop so much, so I ended up just kind of having to compress it and pump it up on the in the DAW, which I didn't love. But I liked the creativity of it. I'm always trying to play with other sounds and other instruments because it affects my songwriting. And I liked the songwriting that came out of that little vocoder. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. I really love them. There's an electro producer. Oh my God, I've forgotten his name now. He uses a vocoder on a lot of his electro tracks. And he's
Cool.
all he's saying is like, the machines are taking over, just like simple little phrases.
Right on the nose with it. Yeah. Okay.
I mean, that's like what I've done there is basically just done a Flight of the Conchords lyric, haven't I? But he's doing like general, he's just doing like corporation, like sort of futuristic electro.
Awesome.
But he's really, 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 really amazing. And it's sort of got me back into thinking, I love the sound of that. Like no one uses vocoders anymore and they sound great.
It's so unearthly. I really love it. It's such a creative tool and it just takes me to a different place. Yeah, a little robotic place where my little robotic heart can write a song. I don't know. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. It's almost like, it's almost a bit like using a puppet when you're like talking. I don't know.
I
it's
hadn't
like
thought
you're
of it that way.
You're expressing yourself through this other character. This like
yes, yeah.
thing.
I had never thought of it that way, but yeah, it's another character.
You really have to enunciate, don't you? And you use them really have to like
enunciate and support. It takes a lot of breath,
Mm-hmm. Have you ever done the Talkbox with the tube in your mouth?
No. I know what you mean, but I've never tried that.
Honestly, I totally recommend trying it. There's a thing called a Rocktron Banshee, which is the original tube. Yeah, the Banshee. There's also the Banshee 2. Yeah, it is really different from the vocoder because you're just basically firing down the sound of a guitar or a synth, and it's your vocal, your mouth, your vocal cavity that's shaping the whole sound. So a vocoder is like bringing together two things outside of your body. And the Talkbox is like putting the sound in your mouth. So you can be like really expressive with it.
Yeah.
The classic
I think of
one,
it as like the bagpipe of vocoders, but there's no actual squeezing involved.
you could probably incorporate a bagpipe
lungs.
if you were like desperate. The only thing is you have this like giant tube in your mouth and you like end up dribbling all over it, but you just have to accept that that's going to happen. And
there's a Persian instrument called the ney that I don't play for that exact reason. It's got a lovely sound, but you do end up just being a fountain of saliva.
Yes.
For whoever's in the front row. It's quite a show. So
quite a show.
I don't know. I might skip that one now that you mentioned that.
Yeah. Where did you start like making your own music, and when did you start doing that?
Yeah. So I started with another woman, and we had a duo for a little while, which I think was really great for me, not being familiar with venues and just being like traveling to unfamiliar cities and unfamiliar bars and being there super late with a lot of equipment. It was a nice intro to do that with another person. And I really fell in love with it and just kind of took off from there. Yeah. So I think my learning curve was I started out wanting to play every venue in every city, just wanted to play all the places people wanted to get in kind of at my caliber, and then have eventually pulled that way back to just looking for my room, which is usually a maybe 80 to 100 person room where we can see each other and they can see what I'm doing with all the footwork that I've spent ages on, and we can have an intimate kind of experience. Yeah, so I've just kind of looked like the one we were talking about in Brighton. That is a perfect example.
The Brunswick,
yes, it was just a lovely room where people came specifically to see music, and they could leave to a separate room to chat if they wanted to. And it was just low lights and good sound, and we had a really great time there.
Amazing. Yeah. When did you play at the Brunswick?
I was touring with a woman from Bristol, Susie Conrad, who we met at the World Looping Championship because she was the UK rep and I was the American rep.
Whoa,
and
you got like a dream team.
She's amazing. Yeah, well, I mean, if you want a whole hour of looping, it's a dream team. Like, I usually would not perform with another looping artist, but we were different enough, and she's also very song-driven. rather than loop driven. And that's kind of our goal. And we just got along really well. We decided to tour together, and that was probably 2000, I think 15, maybe 16.
Oh, not long ago then. Wow.
Not that long ago. Yeah, too long ago, because I wish I could just turn right around and come back.